And here we have our second adaptation, the 2009 BBC TV drama. This one is probably the most well-known British adaptation of Emma. The production has 4 episodes, each being an hour each. It stars Romola Garai as Emma Woodhouse, with Johnny Lee Miller as Mr. Knightley, Blake Ritson as Mr. Elton, Rupert Evans as Frank Churchill, Louise Dillon as Harriet Smith, and Tamsin Greig as Miss Bates, and the prolific Sir Michael Gambon as Mr. Woodhouse.
We certainly have had the longest history with this version. Not long after watching Pride and Prejudice in 2016, Lion found this version on Netflix and thoroughly enjoyed her introduction into Emma's story. Eventually, when living together, she got me to watch a bunch of Austen stuff, with this adaptation of Emma being one of them. It holds a close place in our hearts.
BBC, home of period drama since Colin Firth doused the nation with a shirt-soaking scene that, in my humble opinion, is a historic event for lovers of Austen. Naturally, I jumped at the chance to see the Emma series too, and of course it held its colour with just as much candour, humour and wit.
The music is wonderful, both the orchestrated pieces in the background as well as the actors singing with the piano. The production also has wonderful landscape shots. Seriously, I love the winter shots in the second episode.
The production value is quite high, with beautiful sets and costumes, though sometimes I do wonder how accurate some are, as they feel like imitations of the fashion and not quite what they should be wearing. I love the little detail of Emma having a little pocket watch attached to her dresses in Hartfield, as it builds on the knowledge of how she is mistress of Hartfield and runs the house.
I do like how much more emotive the characters are in this version. Granted, their manners are considered more modern, but it gets the story and the dynamics between the characters across easier to a wider audience. You can see how good Emma and Knightley's relationship is in this one, as she can be openly herself and argumentative, which she tries to curb with other people. It's clear that they know each other very well. Like how Emma can't help but smile at Mr. Knightley when they dance together. There's no razor focus on the romanticism of their relationship, but you can tell that they are meant for one another. This show is one that shows them more as equal friends than mentor and student or pining idiots. The extra emotion also helps with characterizing characters like Emma, as she comes across more as cheeky and innocent of the world than a haughty bitch. She's more likable as a protagonist, as she constantly gets the wrong impression of people and makes silly decisions. In this version, it seems more that she grows up as a person on top of learning that her opinions aren't infallible.
The addition of emotion also helps illustrate how much more reserved Jane is than the others, as her expressions are often more cool and strained. So it makes it wonderful when we see hints of the true Jane, like when she is excited for the idea of a ball and having some backbone towards Mrs. Elton insisting things on her. In this version, we have to say Jane wins the Most Adorable Character Award.
The benefit of the extra emotion is that you can see how similar to Emma Frank is. He's like the male version of Emma and appears very amiable and likable, but when you realise what he's doing, his behaviour is very inexcusable and certainly makes him a worse person than Emma, with how openly he flirts with her in front of his fiancée and how he constantly insults Jane and her family throughout his stay in Highbury whenever he speaks to Emma. It's like he changes his opinion depending on who he is around, because he obviously would not think so badly of them or say such things when he wants to marry into the family. God, he says he wouldn't hurt his father's feelings for the world, but he's more than happy to give the Westons false hope about him and Emma getting together. He really acts like he doesn't want to settle and is enjoying his flirtatiousness and status as a bachelor and player.
You definitely get a better idea of Frank as a person when he's irritated by the heat, grumpy, quite nasty, hating how his life is. He starts off the adaptation as quite likable, but by episode 4, it's very clear that he's a right piece of work, especially when you know the story in its entirety.
It's interesting that it starts in the past before the marriage of Miss Taylor. The first 15 minutes of episode 1 literally covers all of this extra content. From this, we get a better grasp of Emma as a person, and it makes her much more likable and empathetic from the start. Also, it was great seeing Emma as the successful matchmaker, since in the book and other adaptations, we do not see her successes, only her failures in thinking who is suited for who. Though Mr. Knightley has a point that Emma thinks it's a nice thing and then it happens with barely any input from her. It's also interesting seeing her relationship with Miss Taylor in more detail. Like, she appears to have copied Miss Taylor's more cheeky side in her reactions to Miss Bates nattering about Jane. It seems to be a learned behaviour instead of her being prejudiced and irritable.
This extra content also rounds the story out to be about all three of the hybrid children, Emma, Frank, and Jane, as they're all introduced visually from the start, instead of them just being name dropped. It was interesting seeing Mr. Weston and Miss Bates in scenes where they are not the jovial characters we know, seeing them in their moment of losing the children they care for, as well as Mrs. Bates actually speaking.
This, however, does lead into Harriet's importance being played down after the whole Mr. Elton debacle. Harriet is introduced with the characters watching and talking about her, with her friendship to the Martins brought up by Mrs. Goddard, though Harriet explains later that they're farmers and that Mr. Martin is in fact a young man. To me, she's not introduced, much like a main player in the story would be. I like how they show how she is unrefined with her copying Emma's pointed directions at dinner. They at least do good work in showing how undecided and easily influenced she is. She's a key character in the first 2 episodes, but after that, Harriet is reduced to a side and background character. Her marriage to Robert comes a little out of left field in this, as when we last saw her, she was telling Emma not to get in between her and Knightley. There's barely a resolution between her and Emma, after all, that has happened, apart from a short congratulations.
Speaking of Mrs. Goddard, she's certainly gone up in the world in this version. The school looks like one of the estates that the Woodhouses and Knightleys live in. It doesn't scream school to me.
Mr. Woodhouse in this version is a lot more understandable and actually seems less like a hypochondriac. We learn that he was a man who expected the worst and became more protective once his wife died. Thus, you can see why he hates the idea of losing his daughters to sickness, tragedy, or marriage.
I like how Miss Bates darts between talking about pork and Mr. Elton getting married without missing a beat and changing the tone of her voice from grateful to gossipy. Great actress, a wonderful Miss Bates. Even when she's not speaking, there's that jittery energy of her, similar to how she speaks.
This Mr. Elton is certainly one of the more handsome guys, so you can get why he's seen as so desirable, though his hair bothers me. It seems a bit out of place and too modern compared to everyone else's. It's almost like a boy band haircut. If anything, he comes off a little cringe with how obvious he is towards Emma and his affections, and he is super obvious. The mention of a riddle is an interesting change, as he admits to have written it himself instead of saying it to friends. Also, for fuck's sake, John Knightley, had he got in the carriage, the bloody proposition wouldn't have happened. It wasn't a chance mistake like in other adaptations. He did it on sodding purpose because he noticed that Elton liked Emma. She's supposed to have a fucking chaperone. She's an unmarried young lady with an unmarried man. Anything could have bloody happened, and it would have been John's fault. At least Emma has a good relationship with her brother-in-law in this version.
By the way, just so you know, I just wrote down upon the bit about the hair. I know we're going to go back to it. Totally disagree. Loved the hair. It was excellent. I was like, you know what? I could see myself becoming quite religious.
Mrs. Elton, while of course irritating as ever, as she's supposed to be, we actually found her less grating in this adaptation. It's probably helped by Jane trying to push against and away from her at points. Her voice isn't as annoying as in other adaptations either. In a way, the irritating part about her is her constantly looking down on the others and their country lives when she has chosen to marry Mr. Elton, a country vicar. If it's that bad, stay in Bath!
It is easy to compare the show to modern interpretations, but this one stands out well for similarities to the book. Romola Garai makes a wonderful Emma with all the charm and grace of a young lady who has never once been vexed. Furthermore, Johnny Lee Miller gives Knightley a rougher edge than I would have expected. I didn't hate it. I was just a bit surprised that a gentleman would act with such disregard of customs. But then again, BBC does like to take some artistic diversion now and then, like when it diverts from the canon with the passion of the kissing scene. However, I'm not a purist, and I thought that was great. With the Michael Gambon as Mr. Woodhouse. How can you not love this adaptation?
I like the use of small imaginary sequences to illustrate what people think of certain things, like the idea of Jane marrying Knightley or how Jane was saved from falling off a cliff. We're seeing what Emma thinks of them. I feel the same about having Emma's thoughts being conveyed to us through narration over the parts and points where she's considering whether she's in love or not.
Must I really believe he's in love with me? How should one look?
It settles very early on that Emma does not see herself as in love with Frank or wanting to marry him when he leaves Highbury the first time, so we know it more as a fact long before the reveal of his engagement. It was interesting seeing his goodbye appear as an almost proposal to Emma, leading her thinking herself in love purely because she is sad that Frank is leaving and that the ball was cancelled.
Harriet's attack by the gypsies is portrayed as a little more scary and violent. Harriet is pushed over and hassled before they rip out her pocket and run off with her money. I also like how, not too long after this, Harriet burns Mr. Alton's pencil without the large speech about how she is over him.
I like how they present the Box Hill and Donwell visits, with Emma wanting to plan things, but Mrs. Elton sweeping in and taking it over. It works very well and is edited very interestingly. Also, in the scenes around the alphabet letters were good in giving hints at character feelings. That is, Jane's discomfort about Frank's actions and Harriet's attraction to Mr. Knightley, as seen when he mentions the hypothetical Mrs. Knightley.
Box Hill! Hoo-hoo! I remember first watching it and kind of acknowledging that Emma, albeit rude, did make a point because the show has skillfully built up how Miss Bates has annoyed her for nearly all of her 21 years. However, when you look at it, of course Miss Bates would only speak about Jane and her letters for the most part, because that's the only joy and new information that only she herself can share. It's so very clear in this that Frank goaded Emma into thinking that what she was doing was fine, since they were all giggles together. Seriously, what on earth did Frank gain from this? Miss Bates is his fiance's aunt. Emma clearly said it in the heat of the moment, though, and actually the effects of the words aren't as striking as they appear in other adaptations, as the show seems to want to give you a moment to side with Emma before you realise that it was very wrong.
In a sense, it is very clear in this version that Frank was the one who completely ruined the mood, since the entire group broke up after his comments about how those who attach themselves over a short acquaintance are doomed to be unhappy, unlike the Eltons. A jab at Jane. It got to even the point that Emma stormed away from him.
I like how a lot of emphasis is put on how bad Emma feels about what she's done, with her feeling that everyone looks down on her for how she acted. I also like how they show her suffering in her wardrobe, with her unkempt hair and creased clothes.
I really like how the revelations take place, as it's very clear how Emma is affected. She is angry for others and only starts to feel awful when Harriet admits her feelings for Mr. Knightley. Interesting that this version has her say that she regrets the friendship because of how she has changed Harriet, as Harriet never would have thought of Knightley, raised her standards, or thought to ask Emma not to oppose them. It's so clear that Emma believes that they are an item until Knightley admits his feelings.
It's weird, though, that they changed Emma and Frank's final chat to have taken place at Harriet's wedding. Bit of a weird time or place to have it.
I like that they have Mrs. Bates find her voice again, as she never talks in any other adaptation that I've seen.
It was also a nice touch that they included Emma and Knightley going on their honeymoon, calling back to an earlier line where Emma complains that she has never seen the seaside. It is very romantic and shows how, well, wonderful Knightley is to have listened and paid attention. And now on to the shit show. What do we feel, everyone?
Okay, so I've got some questions. First off, just because we spoke about it a bunch. Oh, but Jane and Frank, their thing with the kind of relationship they've got going on, I think personally that Austen wanted it to be kind of like Frank was testing Jane to see how far he could push Jane, because Jane's got this kind of like presence that Emma doesn't have, this like grace of this really accomplished lady. So I think that was Frank. Just going back to the main point that Frank's just a giant wanker.
Yeah, but if it is him testing her, that is such a sign of him being a wanker, because like literally everyone is constantly saying, oh yes, you're going to be a governess, Jane. And you've got Mrs. Elton being like, hi Jane, I found this amazing job for you. And she's like, oh no, thank you. You will take the job, Jane.
Yeah, but also think about it. It could also be Frank testing to see which one of them caves first and admits their secret.
Yeah, that's good.
Because can he push Jane into actually admitting it? Or will he be the one that caves first? Because he almost tells Emma.
Yeah.
And
or Sorry, go on.
And you got the points where Jane's like right at the edge with Mrs. Elton and could quite easily slip and admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this like version really does like to go on the sort of, they are so close to like breaking their cover pretty much.
Yeah, but like Frank also that might be Frank's way of overdoing it, of hiding it. Like I'm not defending Frank because I still think he's a dickhead. Like, but I am saying that maybe he was trying to like just cover it up too well. Maybe. I don't think that's how he did it. I'm just putting it out there.
No. I think I get what you're going for here, trying to make that people think that there is something between them, so then people can go, oh, there's definitely nothing between them. There can't be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like devil's advocate. I don't think that's what personally, but it'd be an interesting theory to be like, oh, he's not actually a wanker. He was just trying to he overdid his cover by making everybody think that whatever. But no, I don't think he did that personally. But yeah, back to what you said about the beginning, like the idea of Harriet as this like main player. I don't see Harriet as a main player, even though she is a main player. That's kind of bad though, isn't it?
No. Harriet is backgroundy in this.
Yeah, she's definitely more backgroundy than she is in other ones, because at least in like other ones she still has like a decent bit of like prominence in later bits. But
in this one there's just nothing much
to
say about her.
It's because this adaptation is trying to make like Frank and Jane like as a couple a bit more like focused instead of it being about Emma and Emma being an idiot.
Yeah, you've got this adaptation, unlike other ones, focuses on all three of the Highbury children rather than just Emma.
Yeah,
because you see a lot more about Frank and Jane in this version compared to others.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously because Harriet isn't one of these noble individuals, she has got quite a sketchy background and not much of a kind of reputation to hand. Yeah, so she could only be a background character. Yeah, and she couldn't be built up. Yeah.
And they never ever bring up like her true parentage in this version. So as far as like we as an audience know, she is exactly what everyone says she is. That she is the natural daughter of no one special or important.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in other adaptations, her parentage is revealed.
She's much more of like a bug in this one, wouldn't you say? Like, she's a plot point. She's rather plot point rather than person.
Yeah, no, definitely. She's just kind of there to like be around to reveal things about other characters in a sense. She's there to like show what a dick Elton is. She's there to like push Emma and Knightley together.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's basically, I kind of, when it comes to TV, if there's a character who's kind of got nothing much of a character, like characterization, is a bit bland, I always call them a plot point David. It's because have you ever seen Killjoys? They had this one guy who had no personality whatsoever. His whole personality was being plot points for other characters.
I don't think we have seen that, no, but it is so annoying when you watch something and their personality is just I am plot point.
Yeah.
I know. But it's like, how do you bond with that? Like, you don't. It's
supposed to bond with characters on TV, and it's harder to bond with like this Harriet.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I don't say
Sorry, I went off on one.
That's not to the fault of the actress. Like, she does a decent job.
Oh, it's writing.
It's just the character. It's the writing.
It's the way that they've written it. Which is a shame, considering, like, didn't I find out that this version was, like, the screenplay was penned by the same person that did, like, North and South? And North and South is fucking fantastic.
Oh, North and South is an absolute masterpiece. Completely agree.
Know.
I watched it like 4 times back to back. I have so many thoughts and feelings. 99 of them are literally horny, and then the 1% is academic. So I'm going to come for the 1%.
No, you're allowed. You're allowed to go. You're allowed to go. Oh,
That's fucking
Armitage.
Thorin Oakenshield. Armitage.
Richard Armitage.
Richard Armitage.
Yes.
So we've spoken about Harriet being less. She's a plot point in this series, 100%. Her whole characterization in the books is taken away and made mediocre, which is definitely one of the failings of this particular adaptation. Also, you're saying about her school looking fancy as fuck. They look fancy as fuck because BBC have got the dollar to get fancy as fuck houses.
Oh yeah, like you watch any of their period dramas, it's just, this is like amazing house porn, but we never have that.
But that's house does not scream school.
Yeah, that's the point. Like in other adaptations, like you see where she is like
school.
It's clearly like it's a house to help young ladies who, you know, aren't living with their families because they're bastards.
Yeah. Oh, illegitimate. Or are we gonna go with bastards? I feel bad saying bastards.
Yeah, illegitimate is the kind way of saying it, but like anyone who's watched Game of Thrones know that if they say you're a bastard, it's you're illegitimate, mate.
Any points that you guys want to bring up for reference before I go on an escapade about why you're wrong about Mr. Elton's hair?
Oh no, please go on about.
No,
Mr.
I think we've covered
Blue.
everything that needs to be covered about Harriet Smith at this point.
Okay, cool beans. Nice. Mr. Elton. Damn, I am feeling like I need the Lord. You know that bit in Fleabag where she's just like, I feel particularly religious.
I've seen lots of clips. I will get around to actually watching it, but I know like she gets the hots for a priest, and
she does. Yeah, exactly. Massive yikes. But there is this one bit in it that always makes me laugh. I know it's meant to be like seductive and stuff, but it just makes me laugh because it's Anthony Scott and he's Moriarty
and he's
in Sherlock.
Fantastic.
And she goes, are you all right there, Father? And he goes, don't say Father. Don't say it when you know it turns you on. And I'm like... And I would like, for Mr. Elton, I'm like, you know what? If you weren't a prick, totally would. Because like I get I agree that like maybe he was a bit too handsome for the role, and I love hot guys, so I know what you mean.
You don't want like a really hot guy to play like a complete another utter dickbag. Like it's the thing about like attractive villains, like sometimes you are able to look past some of the shit they're doing because overall they are just entertaining. Mr. Elton's just a fucking dick.
Indeed. So it's easier to dislike somebody if you don't find them physically appealing. However, this doesn't apply for this particular adaptation.
No.
But though, like obviously that's like up for debate and everything. Obviously, he's not like the fittest one on the cast. But
I get why people go, yes, Mr. Elton. Like I was shocked when I saw this because this was my first viewing of him. So I was like, when the twist happened, like,
it's like, oh no,
it hurt.
Oh
I was
dear.
just like, no, but you were being so nice to Harriet. Oh God, actually, no, you weren't. You're such a dick.
And it's just like, oh no. But then you kind of like Mr. Elton. I'm trying to think of like all these like multifaceted men. They all have their own like alt schemes going on. If I'm going to be like particularly if I'm going to be particularly narrow-minded about it, or open-minded about it, I mean, wouldn't it be? And they all have their own kind of ulterior motives. Like Mr. Elton is a social climber, and he would, of course he is, and especially after having so can we be mad at him for kind of going towards Emma when he sees a upper-born lady having kind of taking some kind of interest in him?
Yeah, like I don't blame him for that, but it's sort of the thing. It's another thing of how clueless Emma is about the world. The fact that like she's so like set in her head of, oh, I'm never marrying, I'm not interested in anyone, that she doesn't notice. She thinks that because he's admiring a painting of Harriet, that she thinks he's admiring the subject of the painting, not the person who did the painting.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh dear.
Any other points I've got? Well, yeah, one thing about like social boundaries that was kind of obviously you got to remember that like it's an artistic interpretation of like the story,
Yeah.
but BBC, somebody at head office was like, you know what, we're gonna make this super like what's the word, sensational, as in like the fact that like it's a very kind of like lots of emphasis is placed on like body language and like sly looks and like sleight of hand and like just little things. So when it like finally builds up and builds up and like when they finally like snog, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, because you know that would never fucking happen in those days. Absolutely not.
Especially when they're not married. Yeah, they're not married
and everything yet. But BBC, like they're like, you know what, we're doing this for you. This is a like
they know how to do their period dramas.
They do, but like having that kind of like sexy, well, maybe not sexy is the wrong kind of word, passionate scene. Yes. That's a very modern like concept. Like even on stage, like those kind of things wouldn't be seen. That's totally something that's come about with like, you know, the screen and the silver screen and all that jazz. So yeah, having that like those kind of feelings, it brings it like a little bit more of a modern edge as well. Like I can appreciate that. But yeah, any other thoughts?
No, I think you've covered everything that I thought.
Yeah. You got any other thoughts on your list, or is that all good?
Only one more, and it was about feelings. How is everybody now they've seen it? I'm only kidding. My thought was about how, well, we kind of covered it already. Was do you think everybody, well, because obviously it's about like there's a lot of kind of repression in the era. Do you think people like, even though they're kind of open with their feelings, do you think they were open enough? Like, do you think part of the charm of how BBC's done it was the fact that like still a lot of it was left unsaid?
Yeah, because it's like it's more open so that the audience understand it, but obviously like, well, the characters still are oblivious as ever, as always. But you can't do Emma without oblivious characters.
Of course. As is the custom.
Exactly. That's the joy of it, is watching a bunch of idiots not understanding. Because it's a bunch of idiots. It's not like two pining idiots that don't realise that they're in love with each other. It's just a bunch of idiots fucking up constantly. Definitely.
I think I can hear Austen spinning in her grave.
I think it's because we're saying it like so rudely, but
no, I think you're right. But a lot of like, well, Austen is the queen of satire when it comes to this kind of like format.
Definitely
satire and social commentary. Really, she makes jokes about people.
Exactly.
But obviously, like, well, this adaptation doesn't, as much as the satire of it, it's way more based on the romance of it. 100%.
Yeah, it's more of like a serious drama. It's not. What a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, there isn't enough like, oh, what silly flip-floppery, fandassery, lacy frilly doodah is going on.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's all me. Anyone got any final thoughts?
Nope.
Final thoughts?
No, I think that's it, because obviously the final thoughts is what we had already scripted, the fact that it's just good. It's a good one to watch.
It is just good. I like it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
This adaptation is certainly the more enjoyable of the TV adaptations that we've discussed this year. It's definitely a good one to watch when you're new to Austen, as it conveys things very well to its audience. It may not be the most faithful adaptation ever, but that is certainly to the show's benefit. I certainly see this one as being more likely to be enjoyed by wider audiences from how the characters emote more openly and the time well spent setting things up.
Hi there, Lime here. So I realised that we were complete and utter idiots and didn't record the end screen the end card for this video at all. Aren't we fucking numpties? And yes, I sound different because I can't be fucked to remove my headphones, and I apologise also for the background noise. It's hot as all balls here in the UK, although it's probably not actually that hot here at all compared to other countries, but we're British and we love to complain about the temperature. Dragon's busy currently going through a novel, so yeah. You want to scream hello at my headphones?
Hello!
There's Dragon. Dragon is here. She's hot as all balls. You enjoying the fan that's fucking noisy?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, so, Patreon. If you want to support us and our increasing endeavours going into... Of course, we'll be doing more Austen next year, so get on that if you want to see us do this again next year. If not, well, I guess you'll see what we'll be releasing next month. And the months after. Please do. And if the Patreon is just too much of a commitment, well, I, Lime, the wenchiest of tea wenches, will require your assistance over on Ko-fi, where I am happy to accept donations to help the tea fund for Dragon, because Dragon is a grumpy little shit when she doesn't get her tea. Although not in this weather, so I suppose we'll be making some nice delicious ice waters for Dragon to cool off her little self. Yeah, thank you for watching, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time where we'll be covering the 2020 movie. Huzzah! Lime out.
Dragon out.
Toodles.